Okay, so this is a conversation that I think a lot of Canadiens fans have had time to think about, but not really all the resources to explore it fully. We're making a lot of videos about prospects drafted in 2022. The 1 Year Later series is going strong. I'm having a really good time with those videos. You guys seem to be loving the content in the comment section as well. But when it comes to the guys taken in the most recent NHL draft, not the guys from a year ago, but the guys from this year, I wanted to have a bit of a conversation about the Montreal Canadiens guy at 5th overall. He needs no introduction because at one point I feel like this guy might have been the most popular hockey player in the world just based off of how much people were talking about him. Okay, maybe not popular. That has a more positive connotation than what I feel was attached to this guy when he was initially drafted. There was a big deal about him going 5th overall. It's David Reinbacher. You know him, you love him, or you maybe hate him if you were a Matvei Michkov fan who wanted the Canadiens to draft that guy. But either way, today we're talking about Reinbacher and the potential of him long term. Part of the reason this video is being discussed is because JFresh's card was published on David Reinbacher the other day, and we also had ourselves a few comments made by Marc-Antoine Gaudin as to what the future plan seems to be for this guy. Now, before we dive into each of those, let's just go over the profile here so y'all are back up to speed. I think everybody is familiar with this, but just in case you aren't, David Reinbacher was a prospect that was supposed to go a lot later than 5th. He was ranked as low as number 20th overall by Craig Button. Other outlets like McKeen's had him at 16. Others had him a bit higher, though. Bob McKenzie had him at 8. Elite Prospects at 9. Ultimately, though, he goes 5th overall to a Montreal Canadiens team who decides to take him over Matvei Michkov. The decision was a big one, and you could say that the Canadiens were drafting for need, especially with the comments made by Kent Hughes after the fact, saying that if Reinbacher was a left-handed defenseman rather than the right-handed defenseman he was, then they may not have been too high on him. Either way, he's the Canadiens guy, 6'2", 194 right-handed defenseman, a very solid puck mover who was a very fluid skater and defensively minded guy as well, who played in the Swiss League this most previous season. He had 22 points in 46 games played, which is pretty good, all things considered. Top pro hockey league in the country, he's an 18-year-old guy getting significant minutes and scoring a pretty decent amount of points. But either way, if everything works out long-term, David Reinbacher could be a number 1 defenseman, he could be a number 2 defenseman, he could be the guy that plays on a pairing with Lane Hudson and allows Hudson to exhibit all the offensive tricks and nifty things that he can do, while Reinbacher is more of a defensively minded presence that stabilizes that pair. However, when it comes to what David Reinbacher is today, this is the JFresh card that was published on social media. You could see that he has a projected 66% chance of becoming a star and a 99% chance of becoming a full-time NHLer. These ranks amongst the other prospects in the 2023 draft are 10th overall, which you could say is a good thing. You could say it's a bad thing. I mean, he was taken at number 5. A lot of people would say that he might have been a little bit too high of a draft pick compared to where he should have gone. But either way, these projections are pretty good. And I saw a lot of Canadiens fans, especially on the subreddit, saying pretty cynical things like, oh yeah, it's good when JFresh's model projects the Canadiens to having a good prospect, and it's bad when the model says the prospect is not good. Obviously, JFresh has his fans, he has his haters. If you're on social media and you know who JFresh is, he does a lot of player cards, and he makes them look very nice, in a very viewer-friendly type of way that portrays the information and the advanced analytics in a very nice format. But having a guy who is out here having a 99% chance of becoming a full-time NHLer, okay, you probably want to see that out of a 5th overall pick, but also 66% chance of becoming a star. Now, star is a subjective term, but essentially it's a loose term here denoting how David Reinbacher has a 2 in 3 chance of becoming what the Canadiens wanted him to be when they drafted him. And I don't know about you, 66% chance doesn't really seem to be too high when you mathematically lay it out, but think about it like this instead. 2 out of 3 chance of getting a star. If it doesn't work out, you have a 99% chance of him just being a regular NHL player in general. And even if you wanted to take a look at those 2 to 3 odds, if this is a casino game, this would be the best odds by far. Now, of course, the NHL draft isn't really a casino game, but if you had to think about it like that, hey, you're taking players at random when they're 17, 18 years old, trying to project the next 10 years of their lives. So it kind of is a gamble. If you want to think about it like that, 2 out of 3 is definitely not bad. And so for David Reinbacher, his model goes out there and spells some pretty good things. Also making the rounds on social media was Juraj Slafkovsky's model from last year. This is the JFresh card from 2022. It says here that Juraj had a 23% chance of becoming an NHL player and a 3% chance of becoming a star. Now, this obviously was denoted poorly because Juraj Slafkovsky didn't really produce too well in Liga competition regular season play, so it's understandable to see why this number comes about, but for David Reinbacher, by comparison, it makes you feel a little bit better when you acknowledge that, yeah, Slafkovsky was an NHL player last year, despite the 23% odds of him projected to being able to do so. So for David Reinbacher, this is good. In fact, we had ourselves another update here from Marc-Antoine Gaudin. This is an article published on radiocanada.ca, going over the Canadiens, going over Reinbacher, and the interesting part about it was posted onto the Twitters here. Habs on Reddit tweeted this out. Marc-Antoine Gaudin on David Reinbacher's upcoming chances to start the season with the Habs. Logic would dictate that the 18-year-old defender returns to Sweden. It is often said that young players can arrive too early in the NHL, but never too late. Defenders take a little longer to develop, and the amount of guards, defensemen, who can claim positions in Montreal limit his chances. It could well be that David Reinbacher is only there to have a first experience in North America and to give an idea of the distance he still has to go. However, the precedent created by Juraj Slafkovsky and the open-mindedness of management in this regard leads us to believe that if he forces the hand of his bosses, David Reinbacher will give himself a chance to start the season in Montreal. And the thing about Reinbacher is that he's already good enough where it's like, if you forced him onto an NHL roster, I don't think he would do too poorly. I don't think he'd be a number one defenseman by any means, but I don't think he would be that bad. When you consider the fact that other players who can play the right side on the Montreal Canadiens include David Savard, Jordan Harris, Lindstrom, Justin Barron, Caden Gooley, Kovacevic, and Wideman, that's a pretty big pool of right-handed D. Now sure, a lot of these guys are probably going to play on the left instead, but still, that's a big pool. David Reinbacher is on his ELC right now, so if the Canadiens wanted to send him back to the minors, Laval, back to Switzerland, there still is some opportunity to expand on the growth that David Reinbacher can exhibit while keeping his ELC as a point of leverage for the future of your contract situation. If Reinbacher plays his NHL seasons immediately and he becomes good enough immediately, then that's a guy whom you're going to have to re-sign sooner. But if you let his ELC slide down a year or two, it makes things a bit easier. It also might be the necessary move if you wanted to say that Reinbacher has more to learn from in the Swiss League. But of course, if he's just playing in, let's say, Laval next season, that's also a pretty good bet as well. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about David Reinbacher having a 99 percentile ranking of being an NHL player in the future and a 2 out of 3, 66% chance of becoming a star in the future? I love the numbers because JFresh makes it seem very good, but of course a 2 out of 3 chance is just a 2 out of 3 chance. There is still a 1 out of 3 opportunity that Reinbacher is not a star. However, it's a lot more likely that he just becomes an NHL player in general. What are your thoughts about this projection? What are your thoughts about where he plays next season? Marc-Antoine Gaudin is saying that if he shows off well enough, he may have no choice but to start in the NHL, and the Canadiens might have to force that to happen. So, what are your thoughts about where Reinbacher goes next season? What do you think about the potential of this guy long term? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.